Thank you for watching Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Budnam. I am thankful to all news resources and also my entire team. Following are the news which have been reported by American, Canadian, European, Asian, African channels and the news agency writers AFP, AP. Now the breaking headlines. Speaker U.S. Congress Mike Johnson under scrutiny by Republican Party. U.S. Senate impeachment process for Homeland Secretary. Russia bombed two Ukraine city brutally. The world is on edge due to Israel response about Iranian attack. Mr. Biden wants higher tariffs for Chinese metal products. Navy aircraft near Chinese waters. U.S. sanctions on Venezuela oil. United Arab Emirates under rainwater. UN aid personnel detained by Israeli forces in Gaza. Myanmar opposition leader moved from jail to house. Columbia University and anti-Semitism. On Wall Street, Dow Jones, Nasdaq, S&P 500 all went down. Now the news in detail.
DemocracyNow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The United Nations has accused Israel of continuing to unlawfully restrict aid into Gaza despite acknowledgments by the United States that parts of Gaza are already experiencing famine. Ravina Shamdasani of the UN Human Rights Office spoke in Geneva Tuesday.
Israel continues to impose unlawful restrictions on the entry and distribution of humanitarian assistance, carry out widespread destruction of civilian infrastructure as well.
This comes as the official death toll in Gaza nears 34,000, including over 14,000 children and 10,000 women. A new report by UN Women finds Israel's assault on Gaza has left more than 19,000 children orphaned. Earlier today, Israel struck a playground and busy market in the Marasi refugee camp. Tension remains high in the Middle East as world leaders urge Israel to show restraint following Iran's recent drone and missile attack. British Foreign Secretary David Cameron has urged Israel to do, quote, as little as possible to escalate tensions with Iran. Meanwhile, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has accused Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of provoking Iran by first bombing the Iranian consulate in Damascus, Syria 2 weeks ago.
Netanyahu is endangering the lives of both his own citizens and all the peoples in the region to extend his political life. This is an indisputable fact. The one responsible for the tension that made our hearts skip a beat on the night of April 13 is Netanyahu and his government, which is seeing red.
The United Nations Human Rights Office is calling on Israel to stop supporting violent Jewish settlers in the occupied West Bank. In recent days, settlers have killed at least 3 Palestinians and attacked a number of villages, burning dozens of homes to the ground. Human Rights Watch has accused Israeli military forces of either taking part in the attacks or failing to protect Palestinians from the settlers. Meanwhile, the Guardians revealed Israel's been speeding up plans over the past 6 months to build thousands of housing units in new illegal settlements in East Jerusalem. At least 9 workers at Google were arrested Tuesday after staging sit-ins at the company's offices here in New York City and in Sunnyvale, California, in the CEO's office to protest Project Nimbus, a $1.2 billion contract to provide cloud computing services to the Israeli government and military. Iman Hassim is a Google software engineer in Sunnyvale.
We demand that Google drop Project Nimbus, the $1.2 billion contract between them and Israel. We demand that Google protect their Arab, Muslim, and Palestinian worker voices from harassment, retaliation, suppression. And we demand that Google recognize Project Nimbus as a workplace safety and health concern.
We'll have more on Google later in the show, with 2 of those Google workers arrested. In other protest news, students at Columbia University and Barnard College have set up dozens of tents on campus to create what they're calling a Gaza solidarity encampment. This is Isra Hirsi, a student at Barnard, who's the daughter of Congressmember Ilhan Omar.
Hello, I am an organizer with CU Apartheid Divest. Today we have over 100 plus people who have come together to form the Gaza Solidarity Encampment. Today we are calling for divestment, we are calling for amnesty for suspended students, as well as transparency from Columbia University on what they invested.
The president of Columbia University is testifying before Congress today. The first 7 jurors have been selected in Donald Trump's hush money criminal trial. Jury selections expected to continue on Thursday. Opening arguments could begin as soon as Monday. Judge Juan Merchan has admonished the former president for intimidating jurors after Trump was heard muttering something under his breath during jury selection. On Tuesday, Trump reportedly fell asleep during the proceedings for a second day in a row. Trump's charged with 34 felony counts of falsifying business records to hide a $130,000 payment to adult film star Stormy Daniels ahead of the 2016 election. The U.S. Supreme Court's weighing whether the Justice Department has improperly used a federal obstruction law to charge more than 350 people involved in the January 6th insurrection. Several justices appeared skeptical of the DOJ's reasoning during oral arguments Tuesday. This is Justice Clarence Thomas.
There have been many violent protests that have interfered with proceedings. Has the government applied this provision to other protests in the past, and has this been the government's position throughout the lifespan of the statute?
Justice Thomas has refused to recuse himself from cases related to the January 6th insurrection, even though his wife, Ginny Thomas, attended Trump's Stop the Steal rally on the Eclipse just before Trump supporters attacked the Capitol. The Supreme Court's decision could also impact the prosecution of Donald Trump, who faces 4 counts under the law, which was passed after the Enron scandal. The possible extradition of imprisoned WikiLeaks publisher Julian Assange to the United States has edged a step closer. On Tuesday, the Biden administration provided assurances to the British High Court that Assange would not face the death penalty and that his First Amendment rights would be protected if he were to be extradited from Britain, where he's been locked up for years. Assange's wife, Stella, slammed the U.S. response, saying, quote, "The diplomatic note does nothing to relieve our family's extreme distress about his future, his grim expectation of spending the rest of his life in isolation in U.S. prison for publishing award-winning journalism," she said. In news from India, security forces have killed 29 Maoist rebels in the central state of Chhattisgarh just days before India's national elections begin. It was one of the deadliest attacks on the Naxalite movement in years. In news from Capitol Hill, Republican Congressmember Thomas Massey of Kentucky has joined Congressmember Marjorie Taylor Greene's bid to oust Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson. Massey made the announcement a day after Johnson unveiled a plan to advance separate bills to send aid to Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan. Meanwhile, House Republicans have finally sent articles of impeachment against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas to the Senate. In voting news, Maine's become the latest state to join the National Popular Vote Compact, which could transform the way presidents are elected in the United States. 16 states and Washington, D.C. have now pledged to award their combined 209 electoral votes to the presidential candidate who wins the nationwide popular vote. The compact will only go into effect once supporters of the compact control at least 270 votes. Support for the National Popular Vote Compact has grown in recent years after both George W. Bush and Donald Trump were elected president despite losing the popular vote. In California, a former U.S. Marine has been sentenced to 9 years in prison for firebombing a Planned Parenthood clinic in Costa Mesa in 2022. Chance Brannon pleaded guilty in November. He admitted he'd also planned to attack a second Planned Parenthood clinic and an LGBTQ pride celebration at Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles. 2 other people involved have also pleaded guilty and will be sentenced in May. In a major win for LGBTQ rights advocates, a federal appeals court has blocked West Virginia's measure banning transgender children and youth from participating in public school and college sports. The ruling stemmed from a case involving 13-year-old Becky Pepper Jackson, a trans athlete who's been challenging West Virginia's ban since 2021. Meanwhile, the U.S. Supreme Court is allowing Idaho to enforce its ban on gender-affirming care for transgender youth, while lawsuits over the measure are heard in lower courts. Under the law, physicians in Idaho face up to 10 years in prison for providing hormones, puberty blockers, or other gender-affirming care to trans children under the age of 18. And here in New York, 2 police officers involved in the fatal shooting of Kowalski Trawick in 2019 will not face internal discipline. New York's police commissioner, Edward Caban, said officers Brendan Thompson and Herbert Davis, quote, acted within the law when they entered Trawick's Bronx apartment, and Officer Thompson, whose wife shot him 4 times. Trawick, who was 32 and aspiring dancer, had a history of mental illness and was living in special housing when he called 911. The 2 officers found Trawick holding a knife as he repeatedly told them he was cooking and asked why the officers were inside his home. The full incident lasted less than 2 minutes. The officers did not face criminal charges. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in New York, joined by Democracy Now! Co-host Juan Gonzalez in Chicago. Hi, Juan.
Hi, Amy, and welcome to all of our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.
Contributor Raymond Arroyo. Ray, we reported on that NPR editor, Uri Berliner, last week in that essay charge that NPR had basically just totally left-wing after Trump's election, failed to fully report on Russiagate, the Hunter Biden laptop issue, etc.
Yeah, well, and for his honesty, Laura, he was suspended for 5 days. And the new NPR chief who suspended him said his comments were disrespectful, hurtful, and demeaning, particularly Berliner's comments that NPR was more focused on diversity than quality journalism. Remember, NPR is government-funded, and this is the new CEO, Catherine Maher, in action.
Perhaps, for our most tricky disagreements, seeking the truth and seeking to convince others of the truth might not be the right place to start. I'm certain that the truth exists for you, and probably for the person sitting next to you. But this may not be the same truth.
The number one challenge here that we see is, of course, the First Amendment in the United States is a fairly robust protection of rights.
Totally.
Laura, as a result of wonderful comments like that, and Maher, the CEO, justifying looting in the name of racial justice, now Uri Berliner, the whistleblowing editor, has resigned. He wrote today, I cannot work in a newsroom where I'm disparaged by the new CEO, whose divisive views confirm the very problems at NPR I cite in my Free Press essay. I mean, this is the last thing they should have done, Laura. It bespeaks the lack of what he called the absence of viewpoint diversity in that newsroom. And a woman like this, where truth, I guess, is just fungible.
Well, first of all, Republicans should have pulled the government out of any involvement in NPR. No government support, none of it. Get rid of it. I mean, again, we've had Republican control of both the House and the Senate at times in the last 25 years. This is no secret that this has been the case for a long time.
Or at least reform it, Laura. If you're not going to defund it, reform it. Bring in, import different viewpoints. But, the truth doesn't change according to your ability to stomach it, as Flannery O'Connor once said. Laura, speaking of truth, while former President Trump held that impromptu rally you showed out in Harlem outside that bodega, President Biden headed to Scranton and today to Pittsburgh to tout his everyman intimate side with a touch of cognitive decline.
My mom didn't live in Scranton since she was 1954. Wall Street didn't build America. The middle class didn't build America. I'm Pittsburgh, and I really mean it. Let's have a Trump sign in the middle that says F. Biden, and having a little kid standing with his middle finger, 7 years old, 8 years old. They have shower, toilet, and a sink, and I got a towel on me and shaving cream, and I hear bam, bam, bam at my door.
Okay, let's just stop there. Now, I don't mean to deprive you of these charming tales, but I imagined he continued to share them with these 4 children when he visited his home, Laura, his childhood home. Now, if you're battling the perception of senility, why are you playing Ring Around the Rosie with the children around your home? It looks like a rest home production of The Pied Piper of Scranton. I mean, what is he doing here? And he took no questions at all.
Well, the kids would, are you smarter than a fifth grader? This is, are you smarter than a second grader? And the answer is no, you're not. Toddler. All right, Ramy also related a story about his uncle, Bosie Finnegan.
He got shot down in New Guinea, and they never found the body because there were a lot of cannibals for real in that part of New Guinea.
Audience.
Okay, now Laura, there's only one problem. None of this likely happened. Okay, we pulled the POW-NIA accounting agency report. The plane went down, but it's because the engines failed, not because it was shot down. And there is no mention, none, of cannibals being in the area. So again, Joe Biden's mind and the fungibility of it, it's a mess. And finally, some entertainment news, depending on what you call entertainment. Super Bowl champ and Taylor Swift's +1, Travis Kelce, has landed a new TV gig. He's hosting a spin-off of the game you just mentioned, Laura. Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? It's called Are You Smarter Than a Celebrity? Well, this is Travis Kelce last week at the University of Cincinnati.
To all my fellow students, I got a few words of advice. You gotta fight for your life!
Well, there you have it, Laura. There's the answer. You are smarter than a celebrity, at least that one. I'll leave it there.
He's a great football player, Raymond, and apparently, I don't know. That's it. Hey, that's how you connect with the kids, all right? That's it for Kelce. All right, Raymond, thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
Tonight, the justice for gymnasts, the major deal for the survivors of Larry Nassar.
I blame Larry Nassar, and I also blame an entire system that enabled and perpetrated his abuse.
Why the Justice Department is set to pay a reported $100 million for the FBI's mishandling of the investigation into the disgraced doctor.
I'm especially sorry that there were people at the FBI who had their own chance to stop this monster and failed.
The CBS Evening News starts now. Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for being with us. We do want to begin tonight with that breaking news of a major settlement between the Department of Justice and some of the survivors of convicted sex offender Larry Nassar. CBS News has learned that the deal is in its final stages, and there are reports the amount could be up to $100 million. And the news comes 3 years after a Department of Justice watchdog report outlined the FBI's mishandling of the case, including how agents were slow to investigate the abuse allegations into Nassar. He was the former team doctor for the women's national gymnastics team. Olympic stars Simone Biles, Michaela Maroney, and Allie Raceman are among the gymnasts who sue the FBI, and the settlement, when finalized, could bring total payments over Nassar's abuse to nearly $1 billion. CBS's Caitlin Huey Burns is going to start us off tonight with this landmark deal.
This settlement could be the final hurdle for justice for some of the top names in gymnastics, abused by former team doctor Larry Nassar, abuse reported to the FBI and mishandled by the agency for almost a year.
I also blame an entire system that enabled and perpetrated his abuse.
They allowed a child molester to go free for more than a year.
The Department of Justice is close to a deal that would pay them and around 100 others $100 million, according to the Wall Street Journal. This comes after a 2021 Justice Department Inspector General report found the agency failed to respond to the allegations with the utmost seriousness and urgency, and 70 or more young athletes were allegedly sexually abused by Nassar after the first complaint against him was filed with the FBI. Rachel Den Hollander was the first woman to publicly accuse Nassar of abuse, though she won't be part of the settlement because her abuse preceded the FBI's failures.
What does this kind of settlement mean?
I'm great for a measure of accountability. We need to start having the hard questions about how to bring a level of accountability to law enforcement.
It's a very big deal. It's the FBI acknowledging that they screwed up, and they screwed up big, and that there were real consequences to their actions, or frankly, lack of action.
And it is rare for the government to issue a large-scale payout like this. It reflects the seriousness of the FBI's missteps in this case, and there are reports tonight, Nora, that this deal could be finalized within weeks.
Accountability and justice, so important for these survivors. Caitlin Huey Burns, thank you so much. Tonight, Republican lawmakers in Arizona thwarted a new effort to repeal the state's Civil War-era abortion ban. If the law goes into effect, most abortions will become illegal this summer. CBS's Elise Preston reports.
The motion to overrule my ruling fails.
Today, Arizona House Democrats pleaded with Republicans to allow a vote to overturn the abortion ban.
We are the representatives of the people, and the people want this repealed.
This is what we are arguing about right now, whether or not we should overturn something that is archaic, something that is going to really impact women in Arizona.
Despite high-profile Republicans like former President Trump saying the ban goes too far, the attempt to repeal it didn't get enough votes. Democrats needed 31 votes to prevail and were just one vote short. They had hoped at least 2 Republicans would repeal the effort. In the end, only 1 did.
Some of us believe that abortion is in fact the murder of children.
Opponents of abortion rights welcome today's outcome.
We need to save freedom in our state. We need to save our Constitution. Our rights are under threat every single day, including the right to life.
Arizona Democrats also tried to repeal the ban last week, but were prevented by the Republican majority. Today, abortion rights advocates vowed to press on.
Any extreme ban will kill women and pregnant people. It will force pregnancy on people who cannot or do not want to have a child.
They say they've gathered enough signatures for a November ballot initiative that would restore abortion rights until fetal viability, which doctors say is between 23 and 24 weeks.
I don't have the words to describe how angry I am about it. This is the reason why I'm out here, is to be part of this community.
Abortion is currently legal in Arizona up to 15 weeks. The state attorney general says if the ban isn't repealed, it could go into effect as early as June. Nora?
Elise Preston, thank you very much. Aircraft manufacturing giant Boeing was under the spotlight at 2 Senate hearings today over allegations of safety failures and quality control problems inside the company. CBS's Chris Van Cleve reports on the 2 whistleblowers who are making serious allegations.
I was told, frankly, to shut up. Boeing quality engineer turned whistleblower Sam Solopur on Capitol Hill warned of his safety concerns about the 787 Dreamliner.
Are these planes safe?
The airplanes are not being built
per spec.
And the company's response to you was to threaten you?
Threaten you, sideline you.
He testified at one of 2 overlapping Senate hearings focused on safety and quality control problems at Boeing.
This focus on money over safety is a bad investment.
Solopor claims Boeing is not following its own production guidelines when connecting key pieces of the 787 fuselage. He fears it could lead to a structural failure years down the line.
We have faulty engineering that, they're trying to shove on our throats.
The FAA is investigating those claims, but Boeing says they are inaccurate, pointing to stress testing like this, saying extensive and rigorous testing of the fuselage and heavy maintenance checks of nearly 700 in-service airplanes to date have found zero evidence of airframe fatigue. We are fully confident in the safety and durability of the 787 Dreamliner. 737 MAX whistleblower Ed Pearson told senators he's given documents relating to the door panel that blew out during an Alaska Airlines flight in January to the FBI. Documents potentially the ones the NTSB says Boeing previously indicated did not exist.
The actual documentation that they've been saying has not been available. It is available.
It's available in the FBI.
And it has been available for months.
We just spoke with the National Transportation Safety Board. While its investigators have not reviewed Ed Pearson's documents, they tell us they do not believe they're the same as the ones they had been seeking. Boeing says it is fully cooperating with all of the ongoing investigations. Nora.
Chris Van Cleve, thank you for your reporting. Now to a possible breakthrough on Capitol Hill, where the House has unveiled a plan to provide billions of dollars in emergency aid to Ukraine and Israel. But the move could endanger the Republican speaker's future. CBS Scott McFarlane is at the Capitol. All right, good evening, Scott. So what do we know?
And Nora, on the same day, top military leaders warned Ukraine is running out of money and munitions. House Republicans unveiled a long-awaited, long-stalled plan to help Ukraine. And they think they've threaded a political needle here. They offer $61 billion for Ukraine, billions more for Israel, but they'll have separate votes, which could help embattled House Speaker Mike Johnson win enough votes from both parties. It also could fuel criticism from Republicans, including those trying to oust him, that don't want more money for Ukraine. Johnson tonight says he doesn't need Democrats to intervene to save him, but multiple Democrats told CBS News they would if it meant more money for Ukraine. And Nora, the bill got a big jolt. President Biden says he supports it too.
That's really interesting. And meanwhile, Scott, there is also news tonight about those impeachment charges against the Homeland Security Secretary.
The second ever impeachment of a U.S. cabinet secretary, the first since the 1800s. Republicans argued Alejandro Mayorkas willfully and systematically failed to enforce immigration law. Democrats today said it was political, and on party lines, they voted to dismiss both articles. It began after lunch and ended before dinner.
So now it's all done.
It's all done.
Scott McFarlane, thank you. Also on Capitol Hill today, a heated hearing over the rise of anti-Semitism on the campus of Columbia University in Manhattan. The Ivy League school has been at the center of some of the most intense campus demonstrations since the war in Gaza began. CBS Nicole Killian reports the school's president admitted that more can be done to protect Jewish students.
The fiery debate over anti-Semitism at Columbia University made its way to Capitol Hill today.
Anti-Semitism has no place on our campus,
as Republicans accused the Ivy League institution of gross negligence for its handling of anti-Semitic incidents, including assaults and vandalism.
Trying to reconcile the free speech rights of those who wanted to protest and the rights of Jewish students to be in an environment free of discrimination and harassment has been the central challenge.
Egyptian-born university president Manouche Shafiq was the fourth college chief called before the panel.
Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Columbia's code of conduct? Yes, it does.
Facing the same questions that led to the resignations of the presidents of Harvard and University of Pennsylvania.
Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's rules or code of conduct? Yes or no?
It is a context-dependent decision, Congresswoman.
It's a context-dependent decision. That's your testimony today?
New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik chastised Shafiq over the university's response to several professors who used anti-Israel rhetoric, including Professor Joseph Massad, who described the October 7th Hamas attack as awesome, astonishing, and incredible.
I know you confirmed that he was under investigation. Yes, I can confirm that. Will you make a commitment to remove him as chair? I think that would be... I would, yes.
Students attending the hearing stopped short of calling on the school's president to resign.
I want the president of Columbia to take the action that she says she's going to take.
President Shafiq told lawmakers that she condemns Professor Massad's writings despite his explicit language. Massad claims in a statement to CBS News that lawmakers misrepresented his article and that he has not been contacted about an investigation. Nora?
That article's still online. Nicole Killian, thank you very much. Breaking news tonight, a new report from Hawaii's Attorney General raises questions about the mayor of Maui's response to the devastating wildfire last summer that killed more than 100 people. CBS's Jonathan Vigliotti has reported extensively on this disaster, and he's in Hawaii with the new details.
Tonight, the first comprehensive look at how the flames that ravaged Lahaina became the nation's deadliest wildfire in more than a century.
This is about never letting this happen again.
A nearly 400-page investigation raising new and troubling questions about Maui County Mayor Richard Bisson. As hurricane-force winds raged, igniting fires, several schools closed, and the state was preparing an emergency proclamation. At multiple times during the day, Mayor Bisson said declaring an emergency was not necessary. At 3:15 p.m., as the fire grew in intensity, state officials tried to reach him, asking if he was in the Emergency Operations Center. They were told no. He finally signed the emergency order at 8 p.m., hours after Lahaina burned down. Last August, we confronted the mayor, who had admitted not calling Hawaii's defense director, Kenneth Hara, the entire day.
You are the highest ranking official here on the island. If the buck stops with your office, how is that possible?
Yeah, I can't speak to what or whose responsibility it was to communicate.
You're the boss of this island, so yes, you can speak to it.
I'm saying I can't say who was responsible for communicating with General Hara.
The Maui fire killed more than 100 people and destroyed thousands of homes and businesses.
Very little was done to prevent something like this from happening.
Do you think that complacency in this case has turned into negligence?
It crossed the border. It crossed the line.
And the Attorney General says this report is not meant to point fingers, but many people are now calling on the mayor for answers. We reached out to his office for comment, but have not heard back, Nora.
Jonathan, you have been reporting and investigating on this from the beginning. Thank you so much. Federal officials target a rapidly growing threat to American teenagers, online sextortion. What teens and their parents need to know, this is important. That's next. The Department of Homeland Security announced a major push today to help protect children against sexual exploitation online. Officials are seeing an alarming rise in cases of what's known as sextortion, and it is taking a devastating toll on some teens. Here's CBS's Jolene Kent.
This campaign is the first of its kind.
Predators go where the kids are.
The Department of Homeland Security is launching Know to Protect to raise awareness of rampant child sexual exploitation online.
Our mission is to eradicate this scourge.
DHS, along with Snapchat, Google, Meta, and others, want to educate families and kids about how to detect suspicious behavior, seek help, and report incidents to law enforcement.
Are you satisfied with what the big tech companies are doing and how they are cooperating with the federal government?
Jolene, when I reached out to the tech company chief executives, we were met with prompt and affirmative responses, eagerly joining this campaign. The tech companies need to do more.
The campaign comes after Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg apologized to parents on Capitol Hill. Snapchat CEO Evan Spiegel did the same.
I'm so sorry that we've not been able to prevent these tragedies.
It is the responsibility of tech companies, probably first and foremost, because we are providing the technology, but young people themselves have a role to play in their own safety. So do their parents.
Tammy Rodriguez's 11-year-old daughter Selena died by suicide in 2021 after sexual predators pursued her online.
When you see a campaign like this, how does it make you feel?
I'm happy to see it, but they need to know that the help is there, that they don't have to end their life.
DHS says the threat to kids online has never been bigger. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children received more than 36 million reports of suspected child sexual exploitation last year. That's up 12% from 2022. Nora.
Such an important story, Jolene Kent. Thank you very much. Why basketball star Caitlin Clark's rookie salary with the WNBA is sparking outrage. That's next. Basketball sensation Caitlin Clark has taken the women's game to new heights, but becoming the WNBA's top draft pick has brought attention to the pay disparity with the NBA. CBS's Jerika Duncan reports Clark held her first press conference today where she talked about how the league can narrow the gap.
This is a dream come true. Like, these are the moments you dream of.
This could also be the moment the WNBA and women's professional sports has been waiting for.
I think the more eyeballs you can get on this league, the better off this world's going to be.
The Indiana Fever select Caitlin Clark.
It was a ratings record when nearly 2.5 million people tuned in to watch as former Iowa guard Caitlin Clark was drafted by the Indiana Fever.
When you look at the amount of revenue that the NBA is getting, they could move some of that money to the WNBA to invest.
$76,000 is not enough for someone who are looking to be the face of the league going forward. No other professional sports league would do something like that, and it's a shame.
The 22-year-old's endorsement deals in college were worth more than $3 million. She'll now get a base salary as a rookie capped at $76,535. Last year's NBA #1 draft pick, Victor Wembanyama, earned over $12 million. But the revenue from both leagues is not comparable. Last season, the WNBA brought in a reported $200 million, while the NBA took in an estimated $10 billion. Clark's popularity could spark a change, enabling the player to get more revenue in their collective bargaining agreements and TV broadcast contracts. Both are up for renewal this year.
Obviously, the new media rights deal that can be negotiated can be life-changing for a lot of players in this league.
Which could be a welcome slam dunk for everyone. Jerika Duncan, CBS News, New York.
Heart of America is next.
This portion of the CBS Evening News is sponsored by Bristol Myers Squibb.
Finally, tonight's Heart of America with an incredible save off the ice at a Cleveland hockey game. Take a look at this. A rogue puck flew into the stands during the third period of last week's Cleveland Monsters game. Asia Davis recorded the moment on her phone, the puck coming just inches from her 4-year-old son's face. Thankfully for the stranger sitting next to them, he batted it down before it could harm his ear. Davis put the video on TikTok along with a challenge to track down the hockey hero. Well, the video went viral, and 5 million views later, Andrew Podolak came forward to tell his story.
It was coming up over the glass, and I just saw it was like wobbling and whatnot, so I was like, oh God, the first thing I got to do first instinct is protect the kid, jump in front of it.
Wow, well, the trio was reunited at last weekend's Monsters game, this time for a hug and a thank you and a celebratory puck drop at center ice. Andrew Podolak and the Davis family, they are tonight's Heart of America. Always thinking about others. That's tonight's CBS Evening News. I'm Nora O'Donnell. Good night.
Tonight, breaking news, the tornado outbreak and severe storms. Workers in one state capital racing to the basement. This is moving east at this hour. Also breaking tonight, the impeachment effort for Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. The effort collapsing within hours of reaching the Senate. And tonight, the NBA player banned from the sport for life. First tonight, the tornado watch is up right now. Severe thunderstorms, damaging winds, and hail.
Oh my God!
16 confirmed tornadoes across multiple states tonight. Tornado sirens sending people to take shelter. This system moving into the Northeast. Rob Marciano has the track of these storms. The breaking news from Capitol Hill, the impeachment trial of Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas, ending just hours after reaching the Senate. And the developing headline involving Speaker Mike Johnson tonight in the House, with votes now coming on aid for Israel and Ukraine. What about the Speaker's future? Rachel Scott live on the Hill. Also the breaking headline at this hour involving issue of abortion. Arizona's 160-year-old abortion ban, one of the strictest laws in the country, will move forward. Republicans in that state blocking the effort today to repeal the ban before it takes effect. Tonight, the testimony from Boeing employees, past and present, sounding the alarm about safety issues. One whistleblower saying he saw workers literally jumping on pieces of a plane to get it to align. Tonight, the Iranian-backed Hezbollah attacking Israel in the north. Prime Minister Netanyahu, his first public comments since Iran's direct attack on Israel. And tonight, what ABC News has now learned about two separate moments when Israel was set to retaliate against Iran, but then stopped. Matt Gupton reporting. Back here in the U.S. tonight, authorities confirming they have found the bodies of two missing mothers on their way to pick up children for a birthday party. Tonight, authorities on the four suspects, including one of the children's grandmothers. President Biden in his home state of Pennsylvania tonight, a state he'll need to win re-election. What he said about the economy and about jobs created in that state. In upstate New York, the video tonight, a deadly police shootout during a traffic stop in Albany. The officers wounded in the ambush. Tonight, the NBA player now banned from the sport for life and why. The object that crashed into a home in Florida. Tonight, NASA now confirming what that object was and where it came from. And America Strong tonight, what happened at the Plaza Hotel right here in New York. It was definitely on point.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening. It's great to have you with us here on a Wednesday night. We do begin tonight with the severe storms moving east and the tornado watches as we come on the air tonight. Severe thunderstorms, damaging winds and hail, 16 confirmed tornadoes across multiple states tonight. Billions now bracing in the path this evening. Severe storms already hammering the upper Midwest and Ohio Valley, heading across the Great Lakes and into the Northeast, with a new storm then moving into the heartland. Storm chasers capturing video of this massive twister forming in Houghton, Iowa, an EF2 with winds more than 110 miles an hour. Those storm chasers finding themselves inside the swirling winds, their vehicle right there in the middle of the blowing debris. And in nearby New London, Iowa, look at this tonight, a home destroyed by the winds, neighbors there showing up to help today. Tonight, this system moving east with a new storm already brewing. Senior meteorologist Rob Marciano leading us off, tracking it all tonight.
Tonight, an outbreak of powerful storms barreling east, targeting millions for a third straight night. High winds and torrential rain hammering Detroit's airport. Tornado sirens sounding in Michigan's capital. The warnings forcing House lawmakers to take shelter in the basement for a time. More than 100 damaging storm reports in the last 24 hours. Storm chasers north of Houghton, Iowa, practically engulfed by a forming tornado.
Oh my gosh!
Then riding alongside it as it regenerates into a monster EF2 wedge. Winds of over 110 miles per hour. Not far from there in New London, devastating damage to multiple homes. Residents coming from miles around to help clean up. And just north of Kansas City in Smithville, Missouri, families cleaning up after a 95-mile-per-hour EF1 tornado ripped off roofs and upended Kevin Kemp's whole life.
It's just a gut punch to know that, this is all I had.
A new system threatening the same area again tonight.
So let's get right to Rob Marciano with the latest track of these storms on the move again this evening. Rob, take us through it.
All right, David, well, we've got the leading edge of this first one coming through right now, and it has not lost its punch over 3 days. Right now, eastern Ohio, West Virginia, and western Pennsylvania under the gun. That's where that tornado watch is. We've had a number of tornadic warning cells there. One is heading towards Pittsburgh. Look out for you in the next 30 to 40 minutes. That will die off after midnight. Next one dropping into the plains. Severe storms, heavy wind, big-time hail coming through the areas from Omaha to Kansas City that got hit with tornadoes yesterday, with the biggest risk tomorrow for severe weather. Waco, Dallas, up through Evansville, Indiana, and right there in the heartland. That's the highest tornado threat late in the day through tomorrow night. Likely to be our fourth night in a row of seeing tornadic storms. David?
Rob Marciano back with us tonight. Rob, thank you. We are also tracking the breaking news on Capitol Hill late today, the impeachment effort by Republicans involving Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas failing just hours after arriving in the Senate. So let's get right to ABC's Rachel Scott. She's live up on the Hill again tonight. This effort did not survive very long once it reached the Senate, Rachel.
No, David. In fact, this Republican effort to try to convict Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas went down in less than 3 hours. Democrats quickly dismissing those charges before this trial even fully got underway. House Republicans impeached Mayorkas over his handling of the border, but failed to provide any evidence of high crimes and misdemeanors. Democrats argue that President Biden was ready to sign the most significant bipartisan border security legislation in decades, but it was Republicans who rejected a bill their own party negotiated under immense pressure from former President Donald Trump. Tonight, the White House insisting Republicans should stop playing baseless political games, David.
Rachel, the other story, the other developing headline from the Hill, Speaker Mike Johnson and House Republicans moving forward with votes now coming on aid for both Israel and aid for Ukraine as well. But Speaker Johnson, knowing his push to vote on all this, could actually put his own future in jeopardy. So where does all this stand in South?
And David, just moments ago, the Speaker of the House was asked why he believes it's worth risking his job to provide additional aid to Ukraine. And he said because it's the right thing to do. So he is moving forward with this complicated plan to bring that $95 billion package that was passed in the Senate with aid for Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan and separate it into 4 different bills. We are expecting votes on that in the House by the end of the week. And as for this push to try to oust him as Speaker, it's unclear when or if those Republicans are going to make good on those threats, David.
Rachel Scott followed it all for us. Rachel, we sure do appreciate it. The major headline tonight involving the issue of abortion as well. In Arizona tonight, the near total ban on abortion dating back to the Civil War, before women had the right to vote, before Arizona was even a state. This ban will move forward. Republicans in that state today blocking efforts to repeal it. ABC's Elizabeth Schulze from Phoenix tonight.
Tonight, Arizona Republican lawmakers refusing to repeal one of the toughest abortion laws in the country, a law written during the Civil War more than 160 years ago, banning abortion in all cases except to save the life of the mother.
The last thing we should be doing today is rushing a bill through the legislative process.
Democrats outraged.
We're talking about a bill that was passed before Arizona was even a state, before women had the right to vote.
But Republican lawmakers tonight defending the law.
We have the best law possible on the books right now.
The 1864 law is the best law possible.
Yes.
A law that makes abortion impossible for women in every circumstance except for to save a mother's life.
Arizona is a pro-life state, and that law was put into place by people that believe in the sanctity of life.
Arizona, one of 21 states to ban or severely restrict abortion since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. Donald Trump has boasted of nominating 3 of the 5 justices who overturned Roe.
We broke Roe v. Wade, and we did something that nobody thought was possible. We gave it back to the states, and the states are working very brilliantly.
Still, Trump says Arizona went too far. He knows that voters will likely have the last word on the matter. Arizona, one of 14 states where abortion could be on the ballot this fall. Abortion rights has won wherever it's gone before voters, including in conservative states like Kansas, Kentucky, and Ohio. Today, Republican lawmakers told me they're not worried.
Voters are smart. They would rather vote for somebody that they respect and disagree with than somebody who doesn't believe in anything.
David, Arizona is, of course, a key battleground in the presidential election, but it is not just the candidates on the ballot. Arizona, again, one of 14 states where voters are expected to decide on abortion. We know in the past when it's on the ballot, turnout has gone up, and in every instance, the abortion rights position has won. David?
Will be a major issue this November, along with the presidential race indeed. Elizabeth, thank you. Tonight, the testimony from Boeing employees, past and present, sounding the alarm about safety issues, they say, at Boeing. One whistleblower today saying he saw workers literally jumping on pieces of a plane to get it to align. Tonight, Boeing fiercely denying the claims. Gio Benitez covers aviation, and he's on the Hill tonight.
Tonight, Boeing scrutinized on Capitol Hill, the company under fire for months after that door plug flew off a Boeing 737 MAX 9 at 16,000 feet.
I have serious concerns about the safety of the 787 and 777 aircraft.
Whistleblower Sam Salapur, an engineer who's worked with Boeing for 17 years, alleging that 787 Dreamliners are at risk of breaking apart in midair after extensive use because, he says, the fuselage isn't fastened together properly.
I have raised these issues over 3 years. I was ignored.
Salapur was eventually moved from the 787 program to the 777, where he says he saw more issues.
I literally saw people jumping on the pieces of the airplane to get them to align.
But during the hearing, the whistleblower provided no evidence to support his claims. Boeing halted 787 deliveries for nearly 2 years to address these issues. The FAA signed off on the fixes. The company standing behind its fleet, saying a 787 can safely operate for at least 30 years before needing expanded airframe maintenance routines. Extensive and rigorous testing of the fuselage and heavy maintenance checks of nearly 700 in-service airplanes to date have found zero evidence of airframe fatigue, and that they are fully confident in the 777, which has safely flown more than 3.9 billion passengers around the world. Boeing has been pushing back hard against these claims, saying that these aircraft are safe. Do you believe them?
The aircraft as a whole may be safe insofar as people getting on planes shouldn't panic, but they need to be made fully safe.
And David, that whistleblower first went to the FAA in January with his concerns. The FAA tells us it is investigating those allegations.
David? Gio Benitez at the Capitol tonight. Gio, thank you. In Israel tonight, the Iranian-backed Hezbollah striking Israel from the north. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu making his first public comments since Iran's direct attack on Israel. And tonight, what sources are telling ABC News about 2 separate moments since that Iranian attack, when Israel was set to retaliate against Iran, but then stopped. Matt Gutman in Israel again tonight.
Tonight, with Israel vowing to retaliate against Iran, tensions ratcheting higher as the Iranian-backed group Hezbollah launched this attack on an Israeli military base in northern Israel. The drones crashing into this village, then that fireball. Hezbollah releasing this video, POV of the drone in that death dive. 18 wounded, including 14 Israeli soldiers. And as the world waits to see how Israel responds to Iran, sources telling ABC News that on at least 2 nights this week, Israel prepared, then aborted retaliatory strikes against Iran. And in his first public comment since Iran's massive missile attack Saturday, a defiant Prime Minister Netanyahu signaling Israel will do everything necessary to defend itself. And tonight, Israel's president revealing new video from October 7th to remind the world that there are still hostages being held by Hamas. You see the kidnapping of Yarden Bibas, the father of the 2 youngest children abducted by Hamas. He's terrified and bloodied. These gripping images of his children, those red-headed toddlers, clutched in their mother's arms as they were taken. And in Gaza, where those hostages are still being held, the Israeli military continuing its relentless assault, striking multiple targets in southern Gaza, body bags lining the sand, dozens reported killed over the last 24 hours, including at least 4 children. And Iran tonight vowing a fierce response to any Israeli retaliation. And David, Israeli and U.S. sources telling us tonight that at this point, if Israel decides to retaliate, it's unlikely to do so until after the Passover holiday is over at the end of the month. David?
Matt Gutman in Tel Aviv again tonight. Thanks, Matt. Back in the U.S. tonight, authorities confirming they have found the bodies of 2 missing mothers. This evening, authorities now on the 4 suspects they say are at the center of this plot, including one of the grandmothers. Here's ABC's Maria Villarreal.
In Oklahoma today, the first court appearance for 4 suspects accused of kidnapping and murdering 2 mothers who vanished on their way to pick up children for a birthday party.
It's very sad. Those 2 ladies should still be here with their kids.
Investigators say the children's grandmother was at the center of a plot to kill her former daughter-in-law, Veronica Butler, after a long fight for custody of the children. Today, the victim's family lashing out at those suspects in court.
So much anger, frustration. How can you hate the mother of your grandchildren so much that you want to end her life?
Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelly were driving from Kansas to pick up Butler's kids for that birthday party. Kelly riding along to supervise a court-ordered visitation. Police finding their car abandoned with blood and a broken hammer nearby. Their bodies found 2 weeks later.
This case did not end the way we had hoped. It has certainly been a tragedy for everybody involved.
Tonight, Veronica Butler's family heartbroken.
Everybody needs to know how great of a mom she was, because there should have been no reason why she had to have that custody battle for so long.
And David, reporters in that Oklahoma courtroom actually say that the father of Veronica Butler had to be held back. He was so full of anger and rage as he watched those suspects get charged in his daughter's murder. David?
Maria Villarreal tonight. Thank you, Maria. We turn now to the race for the White House. President Biden in his home state of Pennsylvania again tonight, a state he'll need to win this November. Biden aiming to draw the contrast between him and Donald Trump, who has spent much of this week in court. Here's Mary Bruce.
Tonight, fully aware that Donald Trump's attention is focused on his criminal trial in New York, President Biden lasering in on battleground Pennsylvania. Speaking to steelworkers, Biden touting his work on the economy and taking swipes at his opponent.
492,000 new jobs so far in Pennsylvania alone. Under my predecessor, who is busy right now, Pennsylvania lost 275,000 jobs. I mean, let's look at the facts. On my watch, unemployment hasn't been this low for this long in 50 years.
Biden's leaning into his working class roots on a 3-day swing through this must-win state, greeting construction workers in Pittsburgh, and visiting his childhood home in Scranton, where he told voters he understands them in a way Trump never will.
Donald Trump looks at the world differently than you and me. He wakes up in the morning in Mar-a-Lago thinking about himself.
The president, well aware that the polls are tightening and that he is gaining ground, has spent more time in Pennsylvania than any other battleground. By our count, visiting the state more than 30 times since taking office. David.
Mary Bruce, who was in Pennsylvania, now back in Washington for us. Mary, thank you. And when we come back tonight in upstate New York, a deadly shootout. The police ambushed. And the NBA player tonight banned from the sport for life. And why? Tonight, a deadly police shootout in Albany, New York. Authorities saying an officer was ambushed during an attempted traffic stop. Body camera video showing the officer shot and wounded while approaching the driver's car. The officer returning fire, killing the suspect. When we come back here tonight, the NBA player this evening banned from the sport. And this is something, the object crashing into a home. And tonight, NASA now confirming where it came from. To the next tonight, the Toronto Raptors' Jonte Porter has been banned from the sport for life because of a gambling scandal. An NBA investigation finding he bet on at least 13 NBA games, gave confidential information to bettors, and bet on his own team to lose. Tonight, the object that smashed into a home in Naples, Florida. NASA now says it was a piece of metal space junk from the International Space Station, released actually 3 years ago. It was just last month. The homeowner says the object, the size of someone's fist, slammed through the roof and 2 floors of the home. When we come back here tonight, what happened at the famed Plaza Hotel right here in New York? Could they set a record? Finally tonight here, the ballet dancers and their technique. America Strong. Tonight in New York City at the famed Plaza Hotel on 5th Avenue, an incredible sight. 500 ballerinas from across the country coming together, and all for a good cause. Raising awareness for the nonprofit Youth America Grand Prix, a ballet scholarship program helping dancers across America. All of the dancers getting ready to simultaneously perform that famous ballet move, dancing on point on their tiptoes, all together for 60 seconds straight. Ages 9 to 19, tying their ballet shoes, each with their own number, and then the countdown.
3, 2, 1, go!
Their hands in the air, Tchaikovsky playing, smiling the entire time, on their tiptoes for 1 minute.
3, 2, 1!
They did it. Right here tonight.
Hi, David. Hello, David. Hello, David. Hi, David.
10-year-old Adriana.
It was just a really special moment.
14-year-old Kaya.
It was a proud moment for all those ballet dancers.
10-year-old Jennifer.
I have never broken a record before, and it was really exciting.
And 10-year-old Elendi.
I enjoy just being on point with the dancers.
It was a beautiful moment. Their talent on full display. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Moore, America's most watched newscast.
All right, good evening. Tonight, 24 million people on alert as dangerous storms charge across the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley. This after a violent system ravaged the Midwest. Take a look at this. Severe storms unleashing numerous tornadoes, massive twisters, forcing people to take cover across at least 4 states. And in Michigan today, look at this, lawmakers evacuating the House chambers as tornado alerts went off. Officials sheltering in place there in an underground parking garage. Pretty incredible. In Iowa, dashcam video capturing the intense lightning strikes that happened there near a highway as thunderstorms rumbled through, and the storms leaving a trail of destruction. In Missouri, roofs ripped off homes and businesses, trailers flipped over, trees left mangled on top of a child's swing set, damaging winds toppling power lines, and tonight power outages are climbing. And these storms are far from over. More than 20 million on alert as this multi-day threat stretches into tomorrow. NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns is with us now. Bill, the Midwest got hit pretty hard. Walk us through where this thing is headed and what's happening.
Yeah, after 20 tornadoes yesterday, everyone wanted to know what was the same storm going to do today over highly populated areas of Ohio, Michigan, and now heading into Pennsylvania. Here's the good number. No tornado reports today. 0. We've had wind reports, we've had hail reports, a lot of hail in the last 2 hours around Columbus, Ohio, and we're still watching the strong line of storm capable of 60 to 70 mile per hour winds, knocking power out now into Pennsylvania. Tornado watch is up until midnight, so just because we haven't had any tornadoes doesn't mean we still can't get one to spin up. And as we take a look at the current warnings, all of the orange is areas that we could see the damaging wind gusts. Right now we got about 30 to 40,000 people without power. Notice this little red polygon to the north here. There is a little spin showing up here on radar, a little rotation. This is a tornado warning in northeastern Ohio, just north of the Ward area. You can kind of like see a little hook in here. So that's a radar indicated. So we'll let you know if we have any reports of anything that spins out of that. And this is that time of year, Tom, that we're going to do this just about each and every day. Tomorrow, once again with a new storm system, elevated risk of severe storms St. Louis to Paducah, back down to Little Rock. Dallas is included in this too. And if we have tornadoes at this time tomorrow, the most likely spot would be here in southern Illinois, including areas around St. Louis.
Okay, we'll keep our eye on all that tomorrow. Bill, we appreciate that. Now to Washington and the major meltdown happening on Capitol Hill. Tonight, Senate Democrats blocking efforts to impeach Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas. This as the House moves to push substantial aid bills, sending billions of dollars to the growing conflicts across the globe. NBC's Brian Nobles breaks this down for us.
Tonight, an impeachment showdown in the Senate, with Democrats essentially dismissing charges against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas in a matter of hours.
Hear ye, hear ye.
Arguing the impeachment by House Republicans was unconstitutional.
To validate this gross abuse by the House would be a grave mistake and could set a dangerous precedent for the future.
But Republicans blasting the move to not hold a trial, arguing Democrats are defying hundreds of years of Senate precedent.
This process must not be abused. It must not be short-circuited. History will not judge this moment well.
House Republicans accuse Mayorkas of willfully ignoring immigration laws, with a record 9.3 million migrants crossing into the U.S. during the Biden administration. Mayorkas calls the accusations baseless. Democrats say there's no impeachable offense. Meanwhile, House Speaker Mike Johnson facing off with his own party tonight, releasing his plan for aid to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan in 3 separate packages. Combined, the proposal would provide $95 billion in funding, and is very similar to the already passed Senate bill that bundled the plans together. Though in Johnson's proposal, $9.5 billion of Ukraine aid is through loans, not grants, a demand of former President Trump. But bringing Ukraine aid to the floor means Johnson is putting his job in danger. House conservatives railed against the plan.
I don't think we should be throwing $95 billion overseas when we have wide open borders and American people are being in danger.
Tonight, Johnson arguing the stakes around the world are too high.
I'm doing here what I believe to be the right thing. I think providing lethal aid to Ukraine right now is critically important.
That Ryan Nobles joins us tonight from Capitol Hill. So Ryan, let's pick up right there. It sounds like Speaker Johnson is trying to take the high road. He says it's the right thing to do. Is it going to cost him the gavel?
It very well could, Tom, and this is a marked shift in the way that Mike Johnson has talked about Ukraine aid, basically from his entire time in Congress. Remember, he voted against Ukraine aid before he became Speaker of the House, but he said now that he is in that job, he receives these classified briefings that he did not receive before, and he believes that the threat is real and that there is a real danger for democracy toppling in that part of Europe, and that's part of the reason that he believes it is important to put Ukraine aid on the floor. And he says if it costs him his job, he's not worried about it. But there are several conservative Republicans who view this as a red line and are ready to move forward with a motion to vacate as a result.
So listen, he's taking some major positions here, right? And it could cost him the gavel. He's also showing that he can evolve on issues. Do Democrats want to work with Speaker Johnson, or would they like to see more infighting within the Republican Party?
Well, they are really holding their fire, that is for sure, Tom. And there was a lot of credit given to Speaker Johnson because he's taken this step. And Democrats still do want to go through the fine details of this legislation before fully endorsing it. But you already saw the White House say that they want this plan passed as soon as possible. And we have seen some Democrats say that they would be willing to step up and help defend Johnson if there was an attack from his conservative flank to try and remove him from his job. We have to see how that process plays itself out. There will obviously have to be some conversations between the leadership of the Democratic Party and rank-and-file members. But there does appear to be at least some momentum toward this idea of not throwing the House of Representatives back into the chaos that we saw over the fall and finding a way to preserve Speaker Johnson's job, especially if aid to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan ultimately passes and is signed into law.
You know, I know Speaker Johnson was down there with former President Trump at Mar-a-Lago last week. The former president was asked recently about Speaker Johnson. He didn't really give a ringing endorsement. Does the former president still have the juice to fix those problems with the Republican Party, help Johnson out, and essentially call the dogs off within the conservative wings of the party?
Tom, he absolutely does. But the question is he willing to extend himself in that fashion? In general, when there are challenges like this for allies of Donald Trump, he tends to only concern himself with himself, not the person who could potentially be his ally. But there is some utility for Donald Trump in that if there is chaos in the House Republican caucus, that could reflect negatively on him because he is the de facto leader of the Republican Party. Johnson did make some changes to this legislation as a result of Donald Trump's urging, turning the Ukraine aid from just an outright handout to Ukraine to a forgivable loan. So that is something showing that Donald Trump's having an impact on all of this. Donald Trump has yet to give that full-throated public endorsement of Mike Johnson, but Johnson has said that he's in regular contact with the president and that the president supports him in his efforts to stay in his speakership.
All right, Ryan Noble's another great report and analysis. We appreciate that. We want to stay on Capitol Hill, though. Today, top officials of Columbia University were questioned about their handling of recent incidents of anti-Semitism on the campus. This coming, of course, after the presidents of Harvard and the University of Pennsylvania resigned following their testimony at the end of last year. NBC News senior Capitol Hill correspondent Garrett Haake has this one.
New York's Columbia University tonight again a flashpoint in the rise in anti-Semitism on college campuses. As pro-Palestinian protests continue across the country and Jewish students report being targeted or feeling unsafe.
I feel a tremendous amount of hostility towards me.
Columbia's leadership testifying before a House committee today, investigating its response to recent incidents of anti-Semitism. President Manoush Shafiq says that's included curtailing access to campus and stiffening penalties for unapproved protests.
Anti-Semitism has no place on our campus, and I am personally committed to doing everything I can to confront it directly.
Administrators pressed to respond to some of the most appalling examples of anti-Semitism.
Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Columbia's code of conduct? Mr. Greenwald.
Yes, it does.
Ms. Shipman. Yes, it does. Dr. Shafiq. Yes, it does.
Columbia's leaders clearly prepared after the University of Pennsylvania and Harvard's presidents stumbled over the same line of questioning last year, ultimately resigning their posts.
That calling for the genocide of Jews violates Harvard Code of Conduct, correct?
Again, it depends on the context.
It does not depend on the context. The answer is yes, and this is why you should resign.
Some questioning focused on work and commentary of certain faculty members.
Support of terrorism is acceptable if you're a Columbia professor?
Not at all.
Some Democrats criticized the Republican-led committee, noting they've now held 3 hearings on anti-Semitism on college campuses and none on bills designed to actually combat the problem. Tom?
All right, Garrett Haake also there on Capitol Hill for us. Next tonight, the new development in a massive settlement between the Justice Department and the victims of former USA gymnastics doctor Larry Nassar. Reports saying a deal appears to be in the works over the failure of the DOJ to act on reports of abuse of star athletes by Nassar. NBC's Ann Thompson has this one.
How much is a little girl worth? A potential answer tonight to Simone Biles' question at a Senate hearing on the FBI's failure to take seriously gymnast complaints of sexual abuse by Dr. Larry Nassar. 2 sources familiar with the negotiations tell NBC News the Justice Department is far along in settlement talks with Nassar's victims. The final amount, the sources say, is likely to be close to $100 million, an amount first reported by the Wall Street Journal. In 2021, Biles and her fellow gymnasts described how the Bureau ignored them.
The agent diminished the significance of my abuse. It made me feel my criminal case wasn't worth pursuing.
Michaela Maroney says she told the FBI of her abuse before she told her mom.
They allowed a child molester to go free for more than a year. And this inaction directly allowed Nassar's abuse to continue.
By one estimate, Nassar abused at least 70 more gymnasts after the FBI was first told. The Justice Department Inspector General, in a scathing report, found multiple failures and policy violations by the Indianapolis field office, which first handled the Nassar allegations. Nassar is serving what amounts to a life sentence in prison, while his victims now may be near some kind of justice. Ann Thompson, NBC News.
Okay, now to the whistleblowers making startling allegations about safety problems with Boeing. It comes one day after one of them broke their silence in an NBC News exclusive interview. Now lawmakers from both parties are demanding answers in those hearings. Here's NBC's Tom Costello with that follow-up.
Today, 2 hearings with Boeing in the crosshairs.
Boeing is at a moment of reckoning.
As a former FAA engineer, a former Boeing engineer, and a current engineer all told senators Boeing is putting production and profits ahead of safety.
Effectively, they are putting out defective airplanes.
Engineer Sam Solapur, who told us Boeing's 787 Dreamliner has a potentially fatal flaw. Would you put your family on a 787 right now?
Right now, I would not.
Today, telling senators he warned Boeing the 787's fuselage could break apart.
I raised concerns internally. I was sidelined. I was told to shut up.
But Boeing is pushing back hard, insisting it does not tolerate retaliation. And after more than 4.2 million flights, 13 years of service, and extensive extensive stress testing, it has zero evidence of airframe fatigue. Today, the CEO of United Airlines with 70 Dreamliners said he's not concerned.
I am totally confident the 787 is a safe airplane.
In the hearing room, relatives of the 346 people who died in 2 MAX 8 crashes overseas demanding change at Boeing.
There was no accountability. Not a single person from Boeing went to jail.
Also today, a panel of outside experts commissioned by the Senate reporting back on Boeing's culture.
They hear safety is our number one priority. But what they see is that that's only true as long as your production milestones are met.
Boeing's culture and safety management needs drastic improvement.
Boeing says it will act on the panel's findings, but it insists safety already comes first. Tom?
Okay, Tom, thanks for that. Now to the latest update in those deadly wildfires that devastated Maui last August. A new 400-page report released today revealing key details on the fire and the response. Hawaii's Attorney General and fire safety leaders addressing the findings in a press conference this evening. Let's get right to NBC. Steve Patterson joins us live from Los Angeles with the latest. So, Steve, talk to us about the major takeaways from this report.
Yeah, Tom, first of all, I think it's most important to note that the report is essentially an extremely detailed timeline of what happened during the fire. It is part 1 of 3 from the AG, meant to simply lay out the facts so that later portions of the reporting have clear receipts for making recommendations. So full stop, we start there. That being said, looking at this, there are clear and consistent breakdowns in communications between Maui's mayor and top state and local officials. And it's clear that those communications breakdowns made it more difficult to realize how serious of a situation this was. In fact, the report details conversations from the mayor, realizing very slowly how serious things are in Lahaina, giving the impression of what residents have been saying for months, that many officials were woefully unprepared for the danger that was being forecasted before that fire hit. But as far as anyone being blamed or a cause being laid out or something even immediately actionable, that's not what this is.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, right? Because those would be the headlines. Do we know when we'll get some of those answers?
So the investigation into the cause, we should say, is being handled by the ATF. We are hearing that those findings are at least several months away, which may line up with the next phase of this AG report expected in about 6 months or so, Tom. If those two things meet, it would make a whole lot of sense for the next phase.
And then how is the report playing in Hawaii?
Yeah, so I spoke to several residents today, one that I think you've interviewed on the ground here, Lawrence. She is saying, and the ones that I spoke to, obviously there's some disappointment. I think a lot of people thought they would be getting direct answers about how this fire started and who is to blame. We've had 2 reports back to back, an action report yesterday, today's Attorney General report. Neither one of those is addressing sort of the baseline factors of people who have now been out of their homes for 8 months. These people want answers. And that is the primary thing that she said above even housing is answers on why this happened, who's to blame, and where this investigation goes next. Those answers simply aren't ready and available yet.
All right, Steve Patterson with that big update. Steve, we appreciate that. Still ahead tonight, new video showing a man climbing onto a roof to rescue his 2 neighbors from a burning home the moment he realized he needed to jump into action. And Caitlin Clark smashing another record, while sales of her new WNBA jersey are putting Clark in a league of her own. Stay with us. A man climbing to the top floor of a burning home to rescue his neighbors. Plumes of thick smoke surrounding them just before the house is overtaken by flames. Thanks to him, everyone involved is expected to be okay. Our Ellison Barber with that incredible video tonight.
Get out! Come on!
A life-saving act of bravery caught on camera.
Come on! Oh my God!
A Pennsylvania man being hailed a hero by officials after rescuing 2 of his neighbors who were stuck inside of a burning home.
Oh my God, get him!
The man identified as Oscar Rivera, speaking with WFMZ TV.
I was in the backyard with my kids playing, and all of a sudden, we hear a boom, and I look at the guy, he was on top of the roof, like on the window, sticking out, saying, help me, and then that's when the adrenaline came, and I just started jumping.
Eyewitness video showing the terrifying moments after Rivera climbs the 3-story home. Thick smoke is seen pouring out of a house as Rivera tries to pull a man out of a window. Onlookers screaming in horror.
Grab his pants! Grab his pants!
After some struggle, Rivera is eventually able to get the man to safety.
The smoke blew, so I had to move out the way, and then that's when I grabbed him, and he was burned, and I just pulled him out.
His community applauding his courageous act before firefighters climbed to the roof to help. 2 people pulled from the home were hospitalized, but the town's mayor says Rivera is the reason they're expected to survive. Ellison Barber, NBC News.
Wow, what a rescue. Okay, we thank Ellison for that. When we come back, the new drug that could help Americans suffering from sleep apnea. A new drug in clinical trials reducing symptoms of sleep apnea by more than 60%. So will the medication replace CPAP machines? And could it also be used to treat heart disease? Dr. Carol Ash joins us to break down what you need to know next. Okay, we're back now with Top Stories Newsfeed. We start with an update on the kidnapping of a 9-year-old in New York last September. Craig Ross Jr. sentenced to 47 years to life for kidnapping and sexually assaulting a girl who went missing from a state park. You may remember she had been on a bike ride and never returned. Her disappearance prompting a massive days-long search. Police arresting Ross after he tried to drop a ransom note at the girl's house. She was found alive in his camper. Arizona Republicans once again blocking efforts to repeal a near-total abortion ban. Earlier this month, the state Supreme Court giving the green light to revive the ban written in 1864. It gives no exceptions for rape or incest. The court's decision has received criticism by both Democrats and Republicans, including former President Trump. The law could take effect in less than 2 months. Arizona Democrats tried repeatedly to repeal it. And Iowa Hawkeye star turned pro Caitlin Clark smashed yet another record. According to sportswear retailer Fanatics, her new Indiana Fever jersey is the top-earning jersey ever for a first-round draft pick across any sport. Fanatics says that her jersey is already sold out, and restock jerseys will not arrive until late August after a record-setting career at Iowa. Clark was picked #1 in the WNBA draft on Monday. Okay, we want to turn out some major health news that could impact millions of Americans suffering from sleep apnea. New trials from drug company Eli Lilly show their weight loss drug, Zepbound, help reduce irregular breathing episodes by as much as 63%. These results coming as evidence shows other weight loss and diabetes drugs on the market could have additional health benefits. For more on this, I'm joined now by Dr. Carol Ash. She's a board-certified internal medicine doctor and an expert in sleep and pulmonary health. Dr. Ash, thanks so much for joining Top Story. So walk us through, tell us what this drug was intended for and how it's helping with sleep apnea.
Well, all the excitement over these weight loss drugs that originally came about, GLP is the fancy word. It's a glucagon-like peptide that suppresses your appetite. And studies now are showing that it can do more than actually reduce your weight.
You're looking great there in Paris. Enjoy your time there, and we'll see you soon. And you'll be able to watch all the Olympics coverage this summer on NBC and Peacock. Thanks so much for watching Top Story tonight. I'm Tom Yamas in New York. Stay right there. More news on the way.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Woodman. Have a good life.